Hey, what's good, everyone? And you're back with Citywide Blackout, your home for music, movies, and more. I'm your host, Max Bowen. And for this episode, it's a double header. I've got two amazing guests coming on to talk about their debut music. First up, it's Toronto-based singer-songwriter Dany Horovitz for his two new singles, Seasons Change and Moving On. Both deal with the concept of moving forward from tough times, and Dany and I talk about the real-life experiences that influence them. He is just putting out his first two songs, Seasons Change and Moving On, both really powerful tunes. I highly recommend checking them out. Singer-songwriter Dany Horovitz joins me. Dany, welcome to the show, man. I am so happy that we could do this.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad we could do this too.
Of course, man, of course. So you are really just beginning your foray into music. You recently released your two singles, part of the forthcoming album, Free Times. First question to you, though, is what led you to do music? Because not to put too fine a point on it, but you are not a super young person.
I am not, which I only know looking at pictures of me when I was younger, because you look in the mirror every day and you're like, I'm still young. But the truth is I've been playing music and writing music forever, basically my whole life. And the real question is, why didn't I do this earlier? Well, it's the kind of thing you put off and you put off, and you do open mic nights here, you jam with friends, you write songs, you play to the room, you play for, people you're dating and so on. And at some point, friends had encouraged me to put demos, and the silver lining of the pandemic for me was to get the equipment to do home demos. Happened to be at a park where a friend of a friend, was encouraging me to send it to him. I sent him a couple of demos. He liked it. He passed me and those demos on to someone he knows in Toronto at a recording studio, and who liked them and said, I'll work with you. So it might have happened earlier in my life. It might never have happened ever, but at the very least, in this era of music democratization, I'm very grateful to be able to put up music, and I'm very happy with the results.
I feel like it happens at the time it does for a reason. Like maybe you weren't ready, or maybe you weren't willing to take that step to say, okay, it's out there, the world can hear me now. What was it like though when your first single dropped and it was out there for the whole world to experience?
It was a real trip. I've been sitting on these tunes for quite a while. So it's a longer arc than you might think, because the arc of singing it to myself and then going through the collaborative process and hearing it and thinking wow, this is much better than I thought. Wow, this is great. When people hear it, they're really going to love it. And then having to depress my expectations, knowing that part of the reason I'm able to do all this is because anybody can do music and there's so much music out there. And then thinking, now that it's out there, whoever hears it, great. I hope they like it. I hope that they share it. But just remember that I'm still very happy with it for myself, no matter what. And I'm very happy that I got some indie press coverage here in Canada and in the States, and it's been very positive. The people who've listened have really liked it, but I think it was more about managing my expectations, if that answers the question. Because as far as the music goes, I'm super happy with it. But as far as the experience of putting it out there, it's a lot of, like you said, I'm not young, I'm not new. There's no labels who want to back me. Just manage the expectations, make the best music, and hope people listen.
Exactly. Well, I'd say you're off to a really good start because, as you mentioned, you have gotten some write-ups. You're at something like 5,000 streams per song. So for someone who's just kind of jumping into this, I'd say great start. But I want to dive a little more into the stories behind the songs. So moving on, the very clear theme of moving forward, and very different from most songs about breakups, because mostly they focus on that experience. Yours is almost like, hey, well, it happened and now we're taking that next step. I want to ask about personal experience. How did this kind of factor into the story?
I should say I've written all kinds of breakup songs, sad songs, FU songs, self-loathing songs. There's just a whole genre of songs around breakups, and they're all great. And I love sad songs because they're more complicated. In this case, I remember waking up a couple of weeks after I'd broken up with a girl and feeling good. And I was like, this is, oh my God, I gotta capture this. I can't remember when I felt good. I wrote down some things, and then I started refining it, and I knew that it was going to be a bright and an upbeat song. But to the point I made earlier about collaborators, although it was a bright song, what really kicked it into high gear was when I worked with my producer Calvin in the studio. He's like, let's introduce accordions. Let's get a pub feel. Let's have you do really heavy percussion. Then I thought, well, what if we did, we did like a bunch of stomps and claps. He said, that's great. Let's do 8 of them. And now it sounds like a big, it builds itself up to a group thing where it's even happier, more excited, more community oriented, energetic than even the original story really, really meant. The story was really like waking up or staying up all night and looking out the window through the dawn and thinking, man, I haven't felt good in a while and I feel good. I'm ready for the day. It's kind of simple. But now it's like telling the story of that to your friends at a bar, and then the whole bar being like, I know that. And they're all joining in, as is, traditional and musical stories.
Hmm. Well, and I think it's very like accurate too, because like we all break up. We've all had
Yeah.
that experience where you think, oh, this is my life now, the sadness. And then eventually we wake up one day and think, oh, I'm feeling good now. I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
And one line that I think really sums it up pretty well was, all my haunting memories do not mean a thing to me. Tell me about that particular experience.
Yeah. I think that was the first line that I wrote. And years ago in undergrad, I was just writing poetry on the subway in Montreal. And I remember seeing my face in the subway. And I was like the apparition, the ghosts that is me, that what I was, and I'm moving forward. Something like that didn't really have any meaning. That wasn't real. I was just exercising my writing. And somehow the phrase haunting memories came to me. And the haunting memories are the memories of all the good things that you did with this person that you were so sad about. The memories that haunted you, the what might have been, I was so happy. And now when you look at the reflection in the mirror, all you just see is yourself and you feel good. Those memories that haunted me 2 days ago, they don't mean anything to me right now. Now I'm happy to be here in the moment, moving on.
Hmm. What do you say, I guess, is like the message though for the folks like listening to this?
Of the song? Oh boy, that's a tough question, because I always leave it up to whoever wants to listen to the song, make up your own mind about what it means to you. But for me, the real message comes sort of at the end, where through the darkness comes the dawn, and surely it don't matter none where you're going, only that you're moving. That, especially when you're a young person and you go through heartbreak, you think it's the end of the world. But as you go through a couple of these end of the world scenarios, as you get a little older, when you're in your late 20s, you realize it's not the end of the world. Your life is more valuable than that. You have more valuable than that. Look at the people you surround yourself with, your friends and your family who care about you. Like, what you're going through is much broader than just these moments. And I think that because music, rock music, pop music is so youth oriented, it focuses so much on the intensity of the moment of the breakup and not the broader picture.
When we're in our 20s, we just spend all those years just like racking up all these emotional scars, and then we get to our
Yeah.
30s and we could not give a fuck.
That's right. It's funny you say that, because another song on the album is called "The Scar," and it's another very adult theme. It's coming out in February, just in time for Valentine's Day, and the theme is ultimately self-loathing. It's about finding someone who you think is great from afar when they're at a distance, like almost Lilliputian, perfect, and then you get to know them and date them and realize that you can't stand them and you hate yourself for being unable to love them. And there's these really complicated dynamics you get into as an adult as you're trying to figure out who you are, who you want to be, who you want to be with, that when you're younger you don't have. It's just, I feel so passionate about this person and they love me and it's great, or they reject me and it's not. And actual relationships are more complicated, and actual human stories are more mature and more interesting.
Dude, I have totally been there. I've definitely had those relationships. Like, we seem so perfect. Why can't I make it work? What am I doing
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah. I've been on both sides of that. I'm sure you have too. It's a human thing.
Yeah. Is that the overall theme though of Free Times, that like change and experience and kind of like growing from it?
Yeah, that's probably the dominant theme of a lot of my songs, because I want to write stories, and you can't really have a story without an arc. Sometimes you can have a good song with a melody and the words don't have that meaning, but I'm trying to write aspirationally, stories through poetry and melody. So there's always going to be that kind of either change or discovery in some capacity,
Hmm.
or an explanation to the listener about what has happened. An unreliable narrator is a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Was that the plan overall, like from the start?
No, it was that I have like dozens of songs that I've written through the years. And so I mentioned my friend of a friend who passed me on to the producer. I sent him a bunch of songs, and he said, here are the songs that I really like. Of like the 40 that I sent him, he was like, here's 16 that I like. And I was like, oh, that's less than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was a better songwriter than this. And from those 16, I selected 10. The 10 that I thought would be either the ones that I like playing the most at home or the ones that I thought would be the most interesting to listen to once finished. And only once you step back and look at it, not even when you record them, but when you're finished all the instrumentation, then how does it sound and how does it look? Then you kind of get a feel for what the album is. And the name Free Times, as much as I love it and as much as I think about it as like the real message that I'm always telling myself, it's actually named after a cafe in Toronto, a restaurant called the Free Times Cafe, where I had a concert on my birthday and I just had a great night. And this feeling of euphoria at the end of that is the same feeling of euphoria as putting out my music into the world.
Nice, nice. So you've had the chance to get out there, play before the crowd. What was that like, especially like the first time you did it?
Ah, it's the best feeling in the world. Um, you know, I don't think that there's really anybody but performers who get to go in front of people and at the end they just clap for you. Sometimes they're standing up and they're just clapping for you and they're looking at you and you're playing music and people are drinking or they're eating and sometimes there's kind of a quiet and you're not because you practice so much when you get up there you don't really notice them but you can feed their energy and sometimes you do kind of notice the quiet and you're like wow they're really listening so there's nothing like it and it'd be great to get back to that. What I need to figure out now that I have all these studio songs is can I get it back on stage just with a guitar or should I get a band behind me? Those kinds of good problems to have. But can I just go back to one thing you said about the stories on Free Times? I'm glad you pointed that out because I did try to put the order of the songs to sort of get through the stories that each of them tell because they really are about love or about loss or about self-care, self-love, about ego, these sort of parts of us. But it's not quite a concept album. So I just wanted to close that thought.
Moving on to Seasons Change, definitely a very different vibe. As you mentioned, moving on, it's very like upbeat, there's clapping, there's stomping, it's very much like a pub song. Seasons Change is a way more like mellow tune. The message I got, and I could be wrong, happens a lot, is that of like enduring change, kind of like getting through it and moving on.
Well, Max, I want to say, first of all, I go back to the point that the reader is the author, not the writer. So, whatever meaning you take out of it, all I care about is that you like it. I think if you like it, I don't really care I care, but I don't, it doesn't matter to me what the meaning is as long as you enjoy it and you think that there's enough in there for you to get meaning out of it. For me, it wasn't really a personal song. It's a story I wrote after something I read in a blog by Roger Ebert. He was the film critic Roger Ebert. He's one of my favorites to read. And also I love his blog. And he wrote that his life philosophy is he believes all people should be two things throughout their lifetimes, curious and teachable. And I was just noodling around on the guitar as I do. And I sang to myself that the world is built by the curious and broke by the ones who are bored. I wrote it down and I thought that's good. I should come back to that. And I just created a story, I think similar to what you're talking about when you say moving on. It's about people who didn't know each other a little while ago. They're not going to know each other in a while from now, but they know each other now. They like and they appreciate each other and they don't know where life will lead them. They just hope that both will continue to be the good people that they know each other are, or else become the miserable types who go through the world breaking everything. And again, I think that's more of an adult, more of a mature look at human beings than you might otherwise have in pop songs.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely. Because usually, like I think it's like we said before, you know, most breakup songs they focus solely on the pain, the misery.
Yeah.
They left me and I'm hurting really bad. It's actually kind of rare when I come across one that's very hopeful, like, hey, things get better and I'm doing okay now.
Things get better. I'm doing okay. Things will be better for you and you'll be okay too.
Yeah, because like that moment, yeah, it sucks, but it's just a moment in your life. It's like it really amounts to like less than like the blink of an eye. And I think people
Yeah.
sometimes just focus on that one thing as if like, okay, this is the rest of my life, next like 60 years, 70 years. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things, whether you're the one telling someone else, don't let the seasons ruin you, or you're being the one being told, don't let the seasons ruin you. It is a good message.
Hmm. All right. So we've got the two singles, you've got the forthcoming album, you've got the really like high quality promo shots. I've seen that.
Thank you.
You're really just like off to the races here. But do
I'm
you
trying.
see this as a career for you, or is it more something you're just kind of pursuing and seeing where it goes?
It's tricky. I get that question. And obviously, in an ideal world, doing this full time would be the dream. That would be the best. It's tough to make a living as a musician. I can't count on it. And because I've got a decent day job, I can afford to make the music that I want to make on my terms and put it out there. Not having a label behind me means I don't get the reach that you might want to have, but not having a label behind me means I can make it as I want to. So if it grows organically and I'm able to do it full time, great. If not, and I got to use my vacation days to go on tour on my own, so be it. It's whatever comes my way. But in the meantime, when I open the door and I step into the little box that is music world, I'm applying myself with as much vigor and zeal as I can to make it real while I'm in that moment. And when I step outside into my regular life, if it's back to everything else, that's great too. I'm not gonna lie, it'd be great to get that kind of momentum, but you can't count on it because the very thing that allowed me to make the music is the very thing preventing from me from being big.
It's a weird catch-22 because, like I said before, not having a label limits your reach out there. You don't have like a press team working for you, sending out those press releases and doing your socials for you. But on the other side of it, you now have a complete freedom to do your music your way. Which do you think is more important, the reach or the authenticity?
Well, let me just say that I do have a press agent, a guy named Eric Alper, who I hired to do some press for me, and he got me some of the press, and he's awesome and excellent. And I would be remiss to say that just people found me by accident, because I don't find you by accident. You have to work hard, but you also have to hire good people, even if it's not with the budget of a label. I think it really depends what you want. I'm at a place where I would rather make the music that I want to make and music that I love playing. And so when I play it, I love it. I go out there either to on a stage or just in my room, and I love it and I listen to it, if that counts as authenticity. But on the other hand, I would fault nobody for saying all they really want to do is play music. All they really want to do is perform. All they really want to do is do the thing that lets them keep doing that act that they love. And if you love performing and someone is like, here's a song, you'll find a way to love that. So I don't think that there is a right answer. And even just caging in terms of like, reach versus authenticity, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. Now, if you found yourself in a hole where you learned to play an instrument when you were younger and you hate it, and you hate doing the thing, and you hate the music you're doing, get out of it. Don't do music. If you love music, do music no matter what.
Hmm. Now, we talked earlier about collaborations, and certainly this is like, I think, the lifeblood for any artist is who they get to work with. Who have you had the chance to collaborate with so far, and who's on your list of folks you want to work with?
Well, so right now on this last album, I collaborated chiefly with three people. My producer, engineer, and mixer, Calvin Hartwick, who's also the manager of the Dreamhouse Studios in Toronto. Sean Royal, who's the bassist for a band called Shade, and he did pretty much all the instrumentation you hear on the album. He's amazing. And a guy named John Foster, who's an incredible session drummer. On the next album, which I've already gone and done the bass and drums track for, it'll be out like way later in a year from now. A guy named Cola, who is the drummer for an indie Toronto band named the OBGMs, and they're awesome, and he's awesome, and we're gonna have a lot more energy coming into this next to the second album to kind of shake it up. It's hard to say who I would have a dream working with, because I would look to the songs that I've written and I would ask my producer, like, in his world, what is he, I trust Calvin so much, say, what do you think? Who would be a good person? Or I would give him my half-baked ideas and he might know this independent artist and this unknown. I think it might be more, if it's songs I've written, maybe like unknowns who can give their own take to it. There's a lot of great independent bands, and there's a lot of great indie bands in Toronto that I admire, but I don't want to put a name out there and then not happen and be disappointed.
I get you, man. I get you. How did you and Kelvin meet?
So, like I said, I did these demos, and then I went to a park where there's COVID, so everything's like outside. You remember, this is summer 2020, and I have these demos in place that I was recording at home, figuring like, what do I do with this? And I have a friend named Lauren, and Lauren has a friend named Kevin who moved to Toronto from Calgary, and he happened to be there. And I know that he does something about music, but I didn't know what. Turns out he's a producer and artist for electronic dance music. And he's like, send me your stuff. My roots are in folk music. I'd love to listen to it. He heard it and he thought, look, I could help you mix it, but I actually know a guy at a studio, the studio that I kind of do my work at. And I've passed it along to him. He liked it. And that was Calvin. So Calvin just, I guess, happened to hear it. And to that end, the secret that I've learned, that what I could have done years ago, but there is no could, there is no should, we are where we are. But for anybody listening, you can probably cold call studios and ask them, who are their producers? What are their experiences? Would they be interested in working with you? As it turns out, Calvin is this incredibly accomplished mixer and engineer. Last year, he had a couple of albums that were shortlisted for the Polaris Prize, which is Canada's most prestigious music prize, and one of them was actually won the prize itself, Cadence Weapons' Parallel World. So I'm working with some pretty heavy hitters in that regard, and there's a lot of people with great experience, whatever city you're in. So cold call them if you don't know anybody. If you know somebody, ask them who they know and just see.
Always ask the question. The worst you're going to get is no. But always ask, because you never know where it's going to take you.
That's how I got on this podcast. We started chatting on Instagram. I was like, I would love to be a guest. And you said, you know what? Okay.
Yeah. Simple as that, and like you asked, I could have easily said no, but at least you would have had an answer and you could say, you know what? I tried. I gave it a shot.
Exactly.
Kind of like where we are now with you putting on your music. You could have said, you know what? This is never going to work. My music is crap. It'll never catch on. But so you said, you know what? I'm going to try and see where it takes me.
It's one of those things, and maybe even going back to that first question about why I did it older instead of younger, there are so many insecurities you have in your life and so many things you have to deal with to figure out who you are. And then you've got this list of things you want to do before you die. They're not bucket lists, because if you don't get to them, no problem. But you want to get in shape. You want to read all the books by this author you love. And then eventually the things that you really want to do that are closer to the bottom of the list, because they're the things you're most afraid to do, because they're the things you want to do the most of all, you get to them and you have no more excuses. And that's how it happens.
Exactly. So, Dany, what is next for you? The big question, what's next?
So for the next couple of months, I'm releasing a bunch of singles. One on December 31st, one in February before Valentine's, as I said, one in March, and then the full album in April. I'd love to have done 2 singles in the full album, but we live in the era of playlists. So getting as many singles as I can out of the studio work is what I'm working on. Also, I did this great photography, like you said. Shout out to Denise Grant, who's like the greatest photographer in the world. And I'm so thrilled to have been able to work with her. When that's done, hopefully I'll be able to do some shows, either in and around town here or maybe go out. We'll see. But in the meantime, I'm also back in the studio working on more music. We're going to put instruments and vocals on some of those tracks. So I've got a pipeline of, either an album or an EP or something to keep the music going. And that's really all that's next for me. Is I think you could probably expect the next little while, as long as I have songs that I think are good enough to be recorded, I'm going to work and I'm going to record them. And I hope it builds enough momentum that people listen to them and find them meaningful.
I'm sure they will. All right. Well, Dany, thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. And for the folks at home, where do they go to find out more about you and to check your music?
Well, the best place is Spotify. Look for Dany Horovitz, DanyHorovitz. I'm also on Instagram at Dany Horovitz, same spelling. I'm on Twitter, though I don't use it much except to tweet about the Toronto Raptors, same spelling. You can also find me on Facebook at Dany Horovitz Music. I would say I'm most active on Instagram, and I would say that Spotify is the best place to listen to my music, but you can get it on Apple, Deezer, wherever you get your music. So please listen.
Absolutely, folks. Definitely check out Seasons Change, Moving On. Absolutely amazing songs, and of course, more to come. And Dany, we'll talk soon.
Hi, this is singer Kate Eppers, and you're listening to Citywide Blackout.
Okay, folks, it's musical break time. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the 2 new singles from Dany Horovitz, Seasons Change, and Moving On. After that, I'm talking with LA-based artist XOHA for her debut single, Outsider. The track is honest and heartfelt, describing the often undiscussed inequalities in America. XOHA and I talk about what she's seen of these inequalities and how she crafted the lyrics.
One more day to tomorrow, a minute since yesterday. 3 months soon will follow, the seasons never stay. Where were we last autumn? We were strangers in the spring. Now that snow has fallen, we are strangers once again. The the curious and broke by the ones who are bored. In time the seasons may ruin us and take all that we adored. Paint all your pictures and sing all your songs. Energies change and stories reframe. Forget all your reasons and right all your wrongs. The more things change, the less they stay the same. The world was built by the curious and broke by the ones who are bored. In time the seasons may ruin us and take all that we adored. Juxtaposed against the sun, then exposed. It's just a night that's come and gone, and I know I'm moving on. Where I'd gone, I'd lost direction, couldn't see my own reflection, standing still but many miles. I found myself after a while in the bright morning light. And all my haunting memories, they do not mean a thing to me. They faded and I know I lost my marbles, but I kept my promise too. I met the night, saw it through, and so I packed my bags and I am leaving, moving on. A world without an bargain made is worthless as the paper it is written on, and I was played as only fools and Mother Nature's many sons say the same. Who awake cannot remember, longing for the wild fever, dreams that in the moment broke them, ripped them till at last awoken, realized they're still alive. Haunting memories, they do not mean a thing to me. They faded and I know I lost my marbles, but I kept my promise too. I met the night, saw it through, and so I packed my bags and I am leaving, moving on. for breathing, when your heart has slowed its beating, when you've paused your overthinking, when you've stopped your search for meaning, then you find you've cleared your mind. And all my haunting memories, they do not mean a thing to me. They faded and I know I lost my marbles, but I kept my promise too. I meant the night saw it through. So I packed my bags and I am leaving. I recommend you do the same. Forget the night and see the flame. The morning sky wherein lies all your answers. For through the darkness comes the dawn, and surely it don't matter none where you're going, only that you're moving on.
Hey, what's up? This your girl Molly McCoy, and you're listening to Citywide Blackout, your home for the best in music, movies, and a whole lot more.
LA-based artist XOHA joins me. XOHA, welcome to the show. It is so cool to have you here.
Thank you so much, Max, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
All right. Let's dive right into the story behind the song. So, this track, which you released back in mid-November, is all about discussing the rather often undiscussed inequalities in America. It's a conversation we don't have, and we should. Why this topic? Why take on this for your debut single?
That's a good question. I think being a teenager in the midst of the pandemic arised a lot of, issues for me and internal issues. So when I was seeing these things like the Breonna Taylor incident, the George Floyd incident, and incidents like that unfold, it made me feel a type of way seeing people, people of color, women being discriminated against in the real world. And I think having time to myself and having time to unpack these issues internally kind of gave me that motivation to write this song. And I think, that's what it's all about.
And certainly this has been, I think, a big year of us taking on those issues. In talking to your friends, people in your generation, how big a deal is this?
I'd say among my friends, at least, we are all very passionate about this topic, considering, especially my school, we're incorporating more diversity into the faculty, into the student body. And I think that has created empathy within me and within a lot of other people, seeing our friends, growing more and more diverse and understanding that they go through those struggles. So it's important to stick up, for their communities as well as ours. And I think the reason that a lot of other people are sometimes afraid to talk about these issues is because they are important issues, but they're also very heavily rooted in past practices. For example, these are generational things, and those things are hard to change, especially when somebody has been taught these things over the span of say 50 years. So if you've been taught these practices, they're kind of ingrained in your brain. So it takes a while to undo that, so to speak.
Yeah, one thing I hear, especially from folks in my parents' generation or my grandparents, is, "Oh, well, I grew up. The neighborhood was A, B, and C, and now it's X, Y, and Z." And I think that is too often used as an excuse for being discriminatory, being racist, being prejudiced. And it's I get that the neighborhoods change. You're not loving it, but change can be good. Here's
Exactly,
a thought.
exactly. So I just find it funny when people bring up that argument because they want to take the newer, stuff that they do like. For example, technology. They're like, oh my God, there's a new phone coming out, blah, 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 blah. So if you're going to adjust to that, why not adjust to the changing social issues? Why not adjust to, the changing social times? And I think it's important, if you're going to take, those new ideas, you might as well take all of them and, try and implement them and try and have an open mind about those issues.
That's a very good point. I think for people who do that, it's such hypocrisy to say, yeah, because like you said, oh, I love the new phones, I love the new tablets, but I don't want to see
Exactly.
my
What are you
neighborhood
doing?
change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how did you go about framing what you wanted to say in the song? Did you wind up going through a lot of different drafts and ideas before you said, okay, I like this, I'm ready for it?
Honestly, I didn't even think I was gonna write a song about it, to be quite frank. I love to write poems, so I think that's where kind of my writing ability sprouted from. But I think that seeing all of this unfold like right before my eyes, and I live in LA, so we're exposed to a lot of those issues. I'm exposed to, a lot of diversity within my community, within my school. So, living in LA, having exposure to all of those events kind of prompted me. Like, I've always loved music, so I was like, I'm gonna make a message through what I'm passionate about, which is my music. So I figured the best way to package and deliver that message to the broader community would be through, songwriting.
And you're very blunt with what you say. You talk about like arriving in the country on a boat, on a bus, pursuing the American dream. I want to ask about that though, because I feel like the American dream isn't what our grandparents grew up with. But for someone in your generation, how do you view the American dream?
So this song was not actually written from my perspective. So in school, I had been doing a lot of research about institutionalized racism, systemic inequality. And I was thinking about, all the people that have come here, that have immigrated here to start a better life for themselves. And I tried to put myself in their shoes, if that makes sense. So I think essentially I was trying to put my audience in their shoes so they could understand, what the American dream is like for immigrants. And a lot of people think the American dream is so easy. You just come here. If you work hard enough, you can start a better life. But that's not the whole story. If you're a white male, then yeah, the American dream can come easier than say if you were a Latina woman. And I think factoring in those identifiers is important when considering how hard someone works or stuff like that, so it shouldn't be an excuse when talking in that scenario.
How does that make you feel? You have this very serious imbalance because, like you said, white male, easy. It's like life on easy mode. For anyone else, super hard mode.
Exactly. There's so many emotions. I think for me, just being a woman of color, um I've heard it from my mom, I've heard it from my grandmother. It's just life is so different for so many people, and being like discriminated against for something you can't control should not be even a thought, e- especially in our generation today. Like, that should be completely erased, but unfortunately it isn't. So I think it's important to arise these messages and bring awareness to topics such as these, so we can then educate other people, because some people did grow up in environments where they weren't exposed to this type of education, to this type of schooling. So I think you like music is a universal connector. So I figured, exploring that through music would help get a broader audience to understand.
And what's been the response since you released the song?
Well, I live in a very supportive community that, talks about these issues. So I think the response here has been really good. I've gotten a lot of, support from family, friends, teachers, and I think it goes along with the changing times. So far it's been pretty good.
All right. When it comes to like future songs, do you think that each one should be taking on a different issue?
That is a good idea. I think I also wouldn't want to pigeonhole myself as an artist, because this also was, a passion project, but I don't want to limit myself to just that. I do think it is important to drive change through music. However, I love to dance. I love to sing. I want to make music that makes people feel good. Whether that be heavy topics or just singing about nothing at all. So I think having the right balance of, fun, dancey, kind of Dua Lipa inspired tunes, and then also balancing that out with like Lionel Richie inspired, Michael Jackson type stuff. Just having a nice balance of, the hearty and then the light.
Good references. I like that. Good
I
references.
love 80s music.
80s music is the best. 80s or
Undeniable, yeah.
90s, actually. 80s or 90s are two of
Oh,
the
yeah.
best generations for music. Who did you grow up listening to?
I grew up listening to almost every genre except country. I'm not big on country, so sorry, sorry about that. But
You've just cut off an entire portion of the entire country. Well done.
I apologize to everybody who loves country, but it's not my thing. Um, I mean, I could see myself, listening to it every once in a while, but it's very rare. So, in the car, I think my dad inspired a lot of my music taste. So we always grew up listening to all the 80s and 90s and even 70s. I love Michael Jackson. I love Billy Joel. I just love, all of the classic Whitney Houston. I love to sing Whitney. Um, just everybody from that generation. I think they had, um, a lot of music that brought messages, but in a fun form. So I think that was kind of my inspiration also in writing Outsider, because it's like you can bring such a powerful message through such a, impactful song, and it just made me want to write it.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about the message. This gets raised a lot through artists, whether they're like writers or musicians or filmmakers. They want to bring this message to the forefront, and they do. And then it kind of fades away, and then it gets brought back again, and then it fades away, and wash, rinse, repeat. How do we keep the conversation going and keep this message in the here and now?
I mean, it's a big topic, and I think it's hard to, center everybody's focus around one thing. So I think music is the first step, but also you have to keep pushing for that change. You have to, bring awareness to fundraisers. You have to, educate your friends and family on these topics so they can understand and educate, their sons and daughters. And I think it's just important to keep that message spreading. And I think education is at the base of all of it, because, if you don't learn, you can't grow, in my opinion. So I think, yeah, just teaching, everybody, whether they know previously or they don't, and
Hmm.
not being judgeful about it.
I don't want to make this too like political a show if we can avoid it, but I really am curious to like talk a little more about this, because one thing I'm seeing with your generation especially is I'm seeing a lot of passion for change, and it's very, very inspiring. You're out there, you're doing the marches, you're doing the protests. What would you say is driving this?
I think as our society grows, there's going to be more diversity across all fronts, whether that be in gender, whether that be in sexuality, race, ethnicity, everything. So now it's to the point where it's not just we're marching for fun. We're marching because this is our lives. We see people like us on TV. So we feel inspired to fight for ourselves. Otherwise, who's going to fight for us if we don't fight for ourselves? So I think about it like that.
I like that. You mentioned earlier on that your father was a big like influence on you musically in terms of like what you listen to. Do you come from a musical family?
Hell no. No, no, no. My dad, he does something in taxes, I think. And then my mom, well, actually, she is a filmmaker, and she directed a lot of movies back in the day. Back in India too, she was an actress. So I guess, I got that entertainment vibe, but nothing necessarily musical, I would say. I think my biggest inspiration was my vocal teacher, because I started, singing very young, around like 5 or 6. Um, and I'm currently 14. So yeah, couple years.
Huh. So when you told them, mom, dad, I want to pursue a career in music, what was their response?
They were fully supportive. I think because they've seen this drive in me from, when I was very young, and if very few people know this early on what they want to pursue as their career. I think for me it's never really been a question. Like, I've never had to think about it. I had a passion for music, and I've always, grown up playing the piano, the guitar, and it's just always been something that brought me so much happiness. So I think, yeah, there was really no question about it.
That's really cool, because I know that some parents, their kids say, "Hey, mom, dad, I want to do music," and the immediate reaction is, "Oh God, they're doomed. We've lost them. They're gonna be living on the streets."
Exactly. Yeah. I'm really lucky in that aspect, because I think my parents, um, they know that I'm a hard worker, and I'm also, this comes with uh, bad sides too, but I'm a perfectionist. So they know I'm not going to stop until I get what I want. And I think, that might be a good thing in the music industry.
I definitely agree. I think you have to be something of a perfectionist, otherwise you're gonna say, "Okay, we'll set a deadline, we'll put it out, whether or not it's ready." How did that influence getting Outsider done? Did you have a hard time saying, "Okay, it's finished, no more tweaking, out it goes"?
I did have a hard time doing that, because I was just like, oh my God. you know what, there's this little chord that doesn't sound quite right. And it was just a bunch of things. But I think with everybody's help, and especially my vocal teacher, Miss Paratori, she kind of, she's well versed in this industry. And she was like, Zoha, you're going to have many songs. You have to let it go and just send it out there. And so she was kind of like my final decider. And I was just like, okay, I can't dwell on this anymore. I just have to put it out there and see what happens. So I think it's all about taking risk and just, putting yourself out there, which, I'm growing and I'm learning how to do, I think.
Hmm. So right now we're really at the beginning of your career. Do you think this makes you an artist?
Yes, I do. I believe that throughout this process, it's not just the debut single that everybody sees. I feel like internally, I've grown a lot as a human being, a lot as an artist. And I think throughout the process, I've learned so many things from my producer, from my teacher, from all my mentors. And I think that, considers me an artist. And I definitely have some other works on the way that I'm really excited to share. So.
Okay. Can you give us a few hints as to what's coming up?
Sure. So this one was, a very big passion project that, I put a lot of effort into. The next one is going to be a little bit more fun, a little bit more, inspired by like 80s synth sounds, if that makes sense. Can't give away too much, but think like The Weeknd, you know, like I said, Dua Lipa, those are, some of my biggest inspirations, but I really love that 80s sound. So, you'll just have to wait and see.
That is such like a great direction to go in musically because I think that sometimes folks they want to be like whoever's kind of like popular right now, but your style is very like nostalgic, at least for me because I grew up in the 80s. Um,
Exactly.
what about that generation of music do you enjoy so much?
I think I also love 80s movies. So I think just being in that element, seeing, all the fun poppy colors and, the bell bottoms and all that, and just seeing, um, I love hearing the synth sound and just everything about that era just screams to me. When I was younger, I had my whole room like 80s themed. I loved it so much. So I think that's just probably my biggest inspiration in watching, all the classic 80s movies. I just love it.
Favorite 80s movie?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
Ooh, good
for
answer.
sure, for sure. I've watched it hundreds of times. It's amazing.
Nice. All right. I want to talk about living in LA. Now, I know that a lot of folks go there because they think, okay, this is where the dream's going to happen. How did you wind up living out there and what's it been like for you?
I pretty much grew up in LA my whole life. My parents, they moved here from India. So I've just always lived here in LA. And I think the biggest thing about LA that has helped me as an artist is having exposure to number one, the diversity across all fronts, as I said before, that gives me a lot to write about and a lot of inspiration. And also the exposure to so many musical professionals in the industry. Like I'm so fortunate to be in a place that is surrounded by, creative people and musical people that, are going to guide me along this journey. And I just have inspiration all around me. And it's really exciting.
Okay. Any venues or places for shows that you are like dying to check out?
Nothing in particular right now. I think I'm very early in my career. So, I still got a lot to think about before I start about shows and stuff like that. But I'm excited to see, where it takes me.
I've talked to a lot of folks who have gotten their career started just as the whole world was basically coming to a halt. What was that like for you when you were, putting all the groundwork together for launching Outsider, knowing that you couldn't do things like a release show?
It was just kind of hard to navigate and kind of overwhelming, to be quite honest, because I was releasing my first song in the middle of a pandemic. So I think there was bad sides to that, but on the good side, on the bright side, I think it also gave me a lot of time to discover what my style was as an artist. So I think across a couple fronts, it did benefit me. Um, as weird as it sounds, it gave me time to really think about how I want this message to be delivered, what photos I want for this, song, the aura we're going for, the vibe we're going for, the message we're going for. And I think it was, well executed.
Okay. And now, of course, we're seeing some return to normal. We're seeing, bands planning tours and shows and such. How are you pivoting now that you can do the more regular artist stuff?
I think it's really helping because I have a lot more time. Of course, I have to balance it with school, but I have a lot more time to do studio sessions. I have a lot more time to meet with my vocal coach and, keep writing, keep progressing in, the songwriting journey. And I'm looking forward to figuring out, when we can do shows, when we can, start building up the fan base. And I'm really excited. Yeah.
How do you balance school in this?
That is a good question because I think the biggest thing that has helped me is making a schedule. Um, I am, you know, as an artist, we are not super organized all the time. So I think making sure I get in my assignments on time while prioritizing, music, which makes me happy, which I need in my life. And I need to, keep writing, keep singing, keep practicing. And I think I usually do my homework first and then do music in the afternoon. So I have time to do both. Um, but yeah, I could never choose one or the other. It always has to be both. So
Hmm.
got to figure out a way to do it.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think it's good that you do that because you don't want to just say, okay, I don't need school. I'm gonna be an
Oh yeah,
artist.
absolutely. I think it's important not to throw away my education whatsoever. Um, I, I go to school, I get A's, and I think it's important to maintain that. Um, just so people know, you have a good education as a backbone to your artistry. And I think it's important to have both. In my case, at least, growing up. But yeah, as a high school student, I think grades are very much still important.
Totally agree. I feel like you can't dive into this thinking, oh, it's going to like magically work out. Like any day now, I'll
Exactly.
get that big contract
Exactly.
and be making $1 million a year.
Not how it works.
It's not in the slightest. It's so hard. In a way, I think it's almost harder these days because we're exposed to so much more music, and that's good. It's also tough because it makes an artist like yourself have to work that much harder to get that kind of exposure. So the question becomes, how do you make yourself known?
I think one big thing is social media. Like social media is so prevalent in this generation today and in our society today. And I think getting that out or putting my work out there through the media also helps me. Although social media isn't all good, I think it really does help boost and get it to the broader audience. Whether that be through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all the various platforms. And I think that has helped me a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think on your Instagram, I think you had something like 80 posts, but like 8,000 followers. That's a very good ratio there.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of planning when it comes to deciding, okay, what I'm going to post and how I'm going to post it?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I have like a social content calendar that we've got to keep track of and do all the captions and all that. But I think it's definitely worth it to see it all come together and definitely getting those engagement numbers that we want. So
All right, well, Zoha, this has been really fun. I've really enjoyed talking to you about the music and your own backstory. But what's next for you?
honestly, I think we're just focusing on the next couple releases. So as I told you, we've got some fun dancey tunes on the way. And then hopefully, I just want to make sure I have the right balance of work and of repertoire. So I want to make sure, there are some passion projects and there are some fun stuff that make you want to get up and dance. So, a lot's on the way
With lots and lots of synth.
with lots and lots of synth. You can count on that.
I love it. All right, folks. Well, definitely check out Zoha Music on Instagram. That's XOHA Music. Follow her on Spotify. Outsider is an absolutely amazing song, and I am sure we'll be talking soon.
Thank you so much, Max.
Okay, everyone, that brings this episode to a close. Big thanks to Dany and Zoha for joining me, and be sure to check out their music. It is absolutely amazing, and there is way more to come. You can follow this show on Facebook under Citywide Blackout, and Twitter and Instagram under Citywide Max. Get at me at citywidemax@yahoo.com, and find the show wherever you check out podcasts, as well as every Saturday at 10 p.m. on Boston Free Radio. To close things out, enjoy Zoha's new single, Outsider, a standout song both for its music and the message. As always, keep those ears open.
shooting star. I could just get by. Same job, no equal pay, but still I work in hopes that I may find a better chance. But you still stare straight through my heart, and I can't say a word. Kindness hides within, beneath the coffee-colored skin. My skin, I'm an outsider, an outsider. No, I don't wanna be, but that's all you can see. Same blood beneath my skin, heaven forbid we'd ever begin. 'Cause I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider. I come from afar, hopping off of buses and cars to live the American dream. But you still stare straight through my heart, and I can't say a word. Kindness hides within, beneath the coffee-colored skin. My sin, I'm an outsider, an outsider. No, I don't wanna be, that's all you can see. Same blood beneath my skin, heaven forbid we'd ever begin. 'Cause I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider. I know all you see is my color. I know I'm an imposter if you try, but my heart still beats the same, still loves the same. I guess it'll just take time, time, time. I'm an outsider, an outsider. No, I don't wanna be, that's all you can see. Same blood beneath my skin, heaven forbid